Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive from Vintage Car Chronicles. You can catch the daily show on Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, and YouTube. And today, we're focusing on Ultima Sports Ltd,
Ultima Sports Ltd.
a company that has a really interesting history and makes some seriously impressive cars.
Yeah, Ultima. They really are something special.
So to start, where did this company even come from?
Well, Ultima was founded back in 1983 by an engineer named Lee Noble.
Lee Noble.
Yeah, and they started out as Noble Motorsports Ltd. with their first car, the Ultima Mk1.
The Mk1, what was that like?
It was a pretty ingenious car, actually. They used parts from all sorts of different manufacturers, like Ford Lancia, Austin, even a Renault 30.
Wow, a real mix of parts. So it was kind of like a Frankenstein's monster of a car.
You could say that, but it worked, and it showed Lee Noble's talent for design. You know, he went on to found Noble Automotive later on.
Oh, right. Noble makes some really high-performance cars.
Exactly. So you can see that he had a real knack for it even back then with those early Ultima.
So we've got this young company, founded by a talented designer, and they're building these unique cars. But what was it that really put Ultima on the map?
That would be the Mk2. And a guy named Ted Marlowe.
Ted Marlowe.
He was the first Ultima customer, and he had a pretty big impact on the company's direction.
How so?
Well, instead of just sticking with the standard engine for the Mk2, he decided to swap in a Chevrolet V8.
Really? The first customer decided to do an engine swap. That's pretty bold.
Yeah, it was. But it set a precedent for Ultima. It showed that these cars were all about customization and pushing the limits of performance.
And that was back in the late 80s.
Right?
Right.
When those small, lightweight sports cars were becoming really popular.
So the Mk2 with that V8 engine, it must have been a bit of a beast.
It was, and it started to make a name for itself in racing, winning races and even championships in some smaller series.
That's cool. So they were building these race-winning cars, but how many Mk2s did they actually make?
Not many, only 13.
Wow, only 13. So they must be pretty rare these days.
They are, and very sought after by collectors.
I bet. So what came after the Mk2?
The Mk3. And this is where things get really interesting.
Oh, why is that?
Well, the Mk3 got a whole new look. It was much sleeker and more aerodynamic than the Mk2. And of course, they kept the tradition of letting customers swap in their own engines. But here's the really interesting part. 2 Mk3s were bought by McLaren.
McLaren, the Formula One team.
The one and only.
What were they doing with Ultimas?
Well, one of the cars was nicknamed Albert, and they used it for testing the gearbox and seating position for their upcoming F1 supercar.
The McLaren F1. That's a legendary car.
Absolutely. And the other Mk3, they called it Edward. And get this, it was fitted with the BMW V12 engine that would eventually power the McLaren F1.
No way. So Ultima was playing a part in the development of one of the most iconic supercars ever.
That's amazing.
What happened to those Mk3s?
Unfortunately, both Albert and Edward were destroyed after testing.
Oh, that's a shame. But it adds to the mystique, I guess.
It does. So we have Ultima building these cars that are not only winning races, but also influencing the development of supercars. And then the story takes another turn.
What happened?
Well, in 1992, Ted Marlowe, our V8-loving pioneer, he bought the rights to Ultima along with his son, Richard.
So the customer who did the first engine swap ended up owning the company.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it is. And this marked a shift for Ultima. They started to focus more on road-legal cars, and they started to expand into the U.S. market.
So they were becoming more mainstream.
In a way, yeah. They were still all about performance, but now they were making cars that you could drive on the street legally. And they were appealing to a wider audience, especially in the U.S.
And what kind of cars were they building during this period?
They launched the Ultima Sport and Spider in the mid-1990s.
The Sport and the Spider, what were those like?
They were more refined than the earlier cars, but still very much focused on performance. And they offered them as both turnkey cars and kit cars.
Kit cars.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you could buy a complete car, or you could build it yourself.
Exactly. And that was a pretty unique offering at the time.
It was. So Ultima was appealing to both casual drivers and hardcore enthusiasts.
Yeah, they were finding that balance between accessibility and exclusivity.
And they were still pushing the boundaries of performance, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely. In the early 2000s, they introduced the GTR and Can-Am models.
The GPR and the Can-Am.
Yeah, and these cars were all about aerodynamic efficiency and balanced handling. They even did testing at MRA.
RRA, the Motor Industry Research Association.
That's right. They were serious about getting the most out of their designs.
So these were some serious performance machines. And I'm guessing they had the performance figures to back it up.
Oh, yeah. These cars were capable of keeping up with some of the best supercars in the world.
Wow, this is an incredible story. But we're going to have to take a quick break. We'll be right back to dive deeper into the performance that Ultima Sports Ltd became known for. Okay, so we're talking Ultima, and we're talking performance. Where do we even begin?
Well, there's one event that really stands out, the GTR's record-breaking 0-100 0-mile-per-hour time.
0-100 0. So that's accelerating to 100 mph and then braking back to 0.
Exactly. And the GTR 720 did it in just 9.4 seconds back in 2006.
9.4 seconds. That's got to be some kind of record.
It was. At the time, it was the fastest ever.
Wow. To put that in perspective, what were some other supercars doing?
Well, for example, the Ferrari Enzo did it in 10.9 seconds.
The Enzo? That's a serious car.
It is. And the Porsche Carrera GT took 11.6 seconds.
So the Ultima was beating them all.
It was. And here's the thing. It did it with street-legal tires and exhaust.
So this wasn't some stripped-out track car. It was a road car. That's incredible. How did they achieve that?
It all comes down to Ultima's philosophy. Lightweight construction, aerodynamic efficiency. They were obsessed with getting the most performance out of their cars. Remember those tests they did at MRA?
Yeah, they were serious about their engineering.
They were. And it paid off. And on top of that 0-100 0 time, the GTR also set a pretty impressive lap time on the Top Gear test track.
Really? What was the time?
1 minute, 12.8 seconds.
Wow, that's faster than a lot of supercars.
It is. And remember, this was an unofficial time, but still very impressive.
Very impressive. Okay, so we've talked about the performance, but let's talk about the other side of Ultima, the kit car aspect. What's the appeal of building your own Ultima?
Well, it's not just about saving money, although that is a factor for some people. It's more about the experience, the challenge, the satisfaction of creating something with your own two hands.
I can see that. It's like taking that childhood love of building model cars and taking it to a whole new level.
Exactly. But of course, building a car is a lot more complicated than building a model car.
So how does Ultima help people who want to build their own cars?
They provide a lot of support. They have detailed instructions, technical assistance, and there's even a community forum where builders can connect and share tips.
So you're not just left to figure it out on your own?
No, you've got a whole community behind you, and Ultima themselves are there to help.
That's good to know. But still, you've got to have some mechanical skills to build a car, right?
Yeah, some mechanical aptitude is definitely helpful. But you don't need to be a master mechanic. There are different levels of kit completion available, so you can choose how much you want to do yourself.
So you can get a bare chassis, or you can get a partially assembled car.
Exactly. And you can always outsource some of the more specialized tasks like engine installation or wiring.
So it's really up to you how much you want to get involved.
It is. And that's part of the appeal of building an Ultima. You can tailor the experience to your own skills and interests.
But let's be honest, there must be some challenges involved in building your own car.
Of course. There are always challenges when you're dealing with something as complex as a car.
So what are some of the common challenges that Ultima builders face?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is choosing the right engine. Ultima offers a range of options, but a lot of builders go for the Chevrolet small block V8.
The classic American V8.
Yeah, they're known for their power and reliability, and there's a huge aftermarket support network for them. But even then, you need to make sure that the engine you choose is compatible with the Ultima chassis and drivetrain.
So there's a lot to think about.
There is. And then there's the maintenance aspect. Ultimas are high-performance machines, so they need regular maintenance, especially if you're driving them hard.
So it's not just about building the car, it's about keeping it running.
Exactly. And you need to find a mechanic who's familiar with these types of cars.
So it's a commitment.
It is, but it's a rewarding one for people who are passionate about cars and enjoy a good challenge.
So we've talked about the performance,
Yeah.
the kit car aspect, the challenges. What else is there to know about Ultima?
Well, remember Lee Noble, the founder who went on to start Noble Automotive?
Yeah, what about him?
Well, it turns out that even after he left Ultima, the company was still playing a role in shaping the future of supercar technology.
How so?
When McLaren was developing their MP412C, they actually used an Ultima GTR as a test mule.
Really? What were they testing?
They were evaluating their linked hydraulic suspension system and their brake steer system, both of which would later become key features of the MP412C.
Wow, so Ultima was helping to develop technology that would end up in a McLaren supercar. That's incredible.
It is, and it just goes to show how influential Ultima has been in the automotive world.
So they were kind of like a secret weapon for McLaren.
You could say that. They were this small British company, but they were making a big impact.
So even though Lee Noble had moved on, Ultima was still pushing the boundaries of performance and technology.
Absolutely. They never lost sight of their roots, and they always had that drive to innovate.
This is an amazing story,
Mm-hmm.
and it just keeps getting better. But we're going to have to take another break. When we come back, we'll finish up our deep dive into Ultima Sports Ltd. And we'll talk about their latest and greatest creations, the Ultima Evolution and the RS. Okay, we're back, and we're finally talking about the Ultima Evolution and the RS, the cars that really show how far Ultima has come.
Yeah, the Evolution and the RS, they're the culmination of everything Ultima has learned over the years.
So the Evolution first launched in 2015. What makes it so special?
Well, it's a true evolution of the GTR and Can-Am models. They took everything that worked about those cars and refined it even further.
It definitely looks the part.
It does. The aerodynamics are incredible, and the handling is just phenomenal.
And then you've got the RS unveiled in 2019. What can you tell us about that?
The RS is basically a no-holds-barred track weapon. It's got a tuned Corvette ZR1 engine that puts out 1,200 horsepower.
1,200 horsepower. That's insane.
It is. And it can do 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 2.3 seconds.
2.3 seconds.
Think
That's
about
barely any time at all. And what about the top speed?
It's estimated to be around 250 miles per hour.
Wow. That's just incredible. And the best part is, it's still available as a kit car.
That's right. You can actually build your own Ultima RS.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Building a car with that kind of performance with your own two hands.
It would be an amazing experience.
It would. And it really shows what Ultima's all about. They're not just building cars for the elite. They're giving everyone the chance to experience true supercar performance.
Exactly. They've democratized the supercar.
I like that, the democratized supercar. So we've talked about McLaren. We've talked about Ferrari. We've talked about Porsche. But in a way, Ultima's story is even more impressive.
How so?
Well, they've achieved this level of performance and recognition without the huge budgets or the massive marketing campaigns.
That's true. They've done it through pure passion and hard work.
And a commitment to their philosophy of building the best possible cars.
Yeah.
Regardless of the cost.
Exactly. They've never compromised on their vision.
And that's what makes them so special. So if you're out there and you've ever dreamed of owning a supercar, or even building one yourself, Ultima Sports Ltd. Has made that dream a reality.
They have. They've shown that you don't need to be a millionaire to experience the thrill of driving a truly incredible machine.
And that's what we love about them. So that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of Ultima Sports Ltd.
A truly fascinating company with a rich history and an even brighter future.
Absolutely. And thanks to everyone for joining us on this journey.
Don't forget to check out Vintage Car Chronicles every day for your daily dose of classic car goodness.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive. Until then, keep those engines revving.